Hello, this is Martin Brossman.
I'm Greg Heyer.
And I'm Elise Archer.
And welcome to Linking into Sales, another exciting show here today.
Yep. Another great episode of the Social Selling Podcast by Linking into Sales, right?
Absolutely.
So, Elise, where are you coming from today?
I am from the grand city of Raleigh, North Carolina. I'm actually at the City Club today, so there might be some background noise, Christmas music. People are drinking already. It's 11 o'clock in the morning and people are wandering around with wine. So I don't know what's going on here, but I want to be here. If people are drinking at 11, it's my kind of place. So if you hear some antics in the background, then sorry, that's what's going on.
That's all right. I'll drink my water. You can drink your water.
Right now, my coffee.
I promise this is water.
Absolutely. Well,
sure it is.
We've got to stretch to lose some weight until the next Christmas after Thanksgiving, right? And I hope everyone had a wonderful holiday. And very excited about this show today, but we need to first mention our sponsor, and that is NC State Technology Training Solutions. That offers all of your professional training needs like Excel and how to professionally take photos and a LinkedIn training and podcast information about that. And then, of course, I have the social media management certificate program that we are also offering there. I offer with Karen Teedy. Greg and I do the LinkedIn and social selling training. And how can they find it, Greg?
Well, you can absolutely go out to linkingintosales.com/NCSUTTS. That's linkingintosales.com/NCSUTTS. To learn more about all the courses that they have available. There's a new semester coming up in January and a couple new classes as well. So if you want to learn about that, and if you're in the Triangle area, it's over at the McKimmon Center right there on Western Boulevard and Gorman Street. So really easy to get to. Everyone probably knows where it is. But classes are, it's a nonprofit organization, so chances are classes are probably tax deductible. To get you education.
Double check with the accountant.
Yeah, but double check with the accountant first. Yes, but you will earn continuing education credits as well. So if that's something that you're looking for, or something you need to do to maintain your status as a professional, then you should definitely check that out.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. What's in the news today, Greg? I mean, you had a tip for people, a little insight. News that's going on.
So the main stuff that's kind of going on right now is that we've heard some. With regards to the Microsoft merger, with Microsoft LinkedIn merger, that Salesforce was actually asking the European Union to really evaluate and look really closely and scrutinize this particular merger, mainly because Salesforce probably just a little bit upset about the fact that Microsoft is buying it, and because Salesforce actually was really interested in purchasing it. They just didn't have $26 billion in cash sitting around in order to do it like Microsoft does. But it looks like that, according to recent news, that this should pass through regulators and the merger should complete no problem. And so we'll see what happens. We do know that actually Microsoft has rolled out a new CRM product for small business owners, and I think they're building it into Office 365. I would imagine that along with this will come deeper LinkedIn integration. So if you are an Office 365 customer and you use it to, all of the web-based versions of Word and Excel, Outlook as well, if you're subscribed to that, I would imagine that more LinkedIn integration is going to be coming along with that. But we'll find out. We'll find out for you. We'll keep abreast of what's going on. And if we can get somebody on, possibly from Microsoft, then we'll definitely do that.
Or LinkedIn.
Or LinkedIn. We'll definitely do that.
We'd love to have you on your show, and I'll be telling you to bring answers back. That's what I'll be preaching.
And they probably won't.
I know.
So
let's see, the thing that created the most engagement on LinkedIn.
Right. And thanks for killing groups. But anyways, that's pretty much the extent. Right now, it's fourth quarter. And it's December 2nd when we're recording this, and things are just going to kind of get a little quiet, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And people kind of prepare to wrap up the year. But this is also a really good time for you to go back and check through your records and making sure you're getting prepared for 2017, what your goals are, what your plans are. Definitely you should be already doing that, but to think about the new things that are going to be happening, at least in the social selling space, how Microsoft is really going to impact social selling next year in 2017. Let's think about a little bit on how that's going to change maybe some of the routines that we do, possibly could improve it, and things like that. So,
and we'll be having a meeting, the three of us, to plan out next year. So if you have comments or something you want, please send them to us and let us know. We really listen to the information. How can they email us on that?
Yeah, just go ahead. If you have a suggested guest or anything like that you'd like to have on the show, definitely email us at info@linkingintosales.com.
And listen to the end of the show for some information on social selling training and an offer you want to take advantage before the end of the year. So
that's right.
Our guest today.
So, Martin and Elise, I'm very sorry you did not make it to the Internet Summit.
Me too.
And, it would have been great to kind of, hang out with you guys. But I know Martin was there in social media spirit. Yeah. And then, Elise, I don't know, where were you at?
I have no idea. It's so bad. I have no clue. When was the summit? It was
November 15th and 16th. So
really important for technology. We need to make it a link into sales trio next year. So we'll talk about it. Okay. Yeah. It'd be really good. We all three go, but it was excellent. Great job. And apparently they're going to, they have the chance for us to speak there next year.
We're actually going to apply. Martin and I will probably submit different presentations to present over at the Internet Summit. But they did have a couple folks that maybe you might be familiar with. One in particular is Vivica von Rosen, who has been a huge LinkedIn advocate. She gave a pre-conference workshop on social selling in the B2B environment. I got mixed feedback on how the course went. I was reading a post by someone here locally, and that she actually gave some pretty good feedback about like how do you manage multiple identities on your LinkedIn profile. And I'm guilty of it. Because between this podcast and what we're doing, we're linking into sales and a full-time job and things like that, it becomes kind of hard, to manage what your identity looks like. But if you basically what she was recommending, and I agree with this approach, it's find that common thread that kind of links all of them together and make sure you connect that in your summary section of your profile. All right. So if you're doing sales, but you also have a side business or you have another passion that you have, there's a reason why there's all a common thread between all of it. And if you can think about what that is and make sure it comes out in your summary section, that actually works pretty well for kind of help link those different current experience positions together. What do you think, Elise?
Well, I think that's smart. And these days, so many people have multiple things that they're doing. Right? I think it's actually rare to find someone who's just doing one thing. So I'd actually never really thought about it before. Like, what's the persona that I'm putting out? I guess I probably lead with the thing that actually makes me the most money, which is sales coaching. Like, that's the primary thing I do. But that's a really good point. I mean, I can see how, summary explains this is how everything ties together. This is what I'm passionate about. But I've never really wondered that when I've seen somebody's profile with multiple things. It's never been surprising or shocking. I think it's really common these days. It's worth thinking about how you present it, though.
Yeah, I've actually had people recently who have been reaching out to me in reference to linking into sales at my full-time job. So like they're pulling they're using those email tools that help you kind of figure out what somebody's email address is, and they'll send you that email, but they're like, let's pull the most current position out of there, and then search the domain for his valid email address, and then send them an email. Someone had reached out yesterday, and I sent an email back, and I said, "Hey, listen, let's get the email right on this one. Send it over to this one, please." So there's some mistakes, and you really do have to take and avoid those mistakes from happening. Really try to avoid them at all costs. But what was really cool about the Internet Summit, which is the point about this particular episode, is that I had a chance to sit down and talk with Carlos Gil. Now, if you remember a number of episodes back, when Coca Sexton, who used to be the global social media manager for LinkedIn, when he stepped down into a new position, a new internal position at LinkedIn, they were actually looking for Coca's replacement. Well, Carlos Gil had some really good experience from working at several different organizations, and one of them being Winn-Dixie, where which is a grocery store chain that's primarily in the Southeast, in the deep Southeast. where he was actually managing all of the social media campaigns for them. So he actually came out to LinkedIn, worked there for a little while, but then left and now is at BMC Software as their global social media manager. And he is also one of the top 50 Snapchat influencers. Now, I know we've heard a lot about Snapchat, but trust me, this conversation is not about naked pictures.
Oh,
I'm sorry to disappoint you.
It is a little bit.
It a little bit.
It is a little
I
bit,
see.
if we're honest.
Maybe
Yeah, I'm a Snapchat picker. I took for those who are listening, I took a little sticky note that's yellow and act like it was pouring out of my mouth. So.
You can't unsee it.
That's right. You can't unsee it. That's
All right. No, yeah.
Sorry, we just derailed you, Greg. Sorry.
So I got a chance to go into Carlos's session and talk with him and listen to his presentation about how you can use Snapchat in a B2B environment. Now, he was primarily using it, I'm sorry, not a B2B environment, but a business environment. So it's how do you reach consumers or how can you use it to engage with other businesses? He gave us a number of really good suggestions, which we're going to talk about following the interview. But the main thing here is that when you think about these new social platforms that are coming out, you have to consider and evaluate them because the prospects you're trying to reach might be on that platform. All right. Now, if you remember back in 2014, I published a post on my LinkedIn profile called "Social Selling is About Opening, Not Closing." And basically the premise of that was that, sales cannot continue to just close everything. They have to take and build relationships and continue to nurture those relationships, all throughout the time that person is a customer with the company, right? So what I have seen from salespeople is they have used Snapchat to continue to engage with their customers while they're on customer visits, right? Mm-hmm. I've actually seen people do face swaps. So there's a neat little feature inside there where you can actually swap faces. People will do it with their kids, which is really funny. I did it with my daughter, and it was kind of funny seeing her have my
face.
A little
disturbing to me, but that's all right.
So, but it's really fun and it's engaging and it's to a degree it's somewhat it's intimate. It takes a relationship to another level.
Well, there are several things I want to say. One is just like ideas come out half-baked, it's amazing how quickly we'll write off a new platform because experts want to take a stand on it or something, and still until they listen for it to ring out. And Snapchat and I also think we don't underestimate the overwhelm of learning new things and how many of us, including myself, have a resistance to learning new things. Even though I like new things, having to learn a whole new paradigm, a new world, does take work. It takes thinking. So listening to see, is Snapchat something that's going to be sticking and working, or is it a Pokemon Go that kind of had a real big surge and now starting to dwindle down a bit, and is a just example of something. And I think that's part of the skill in our field is to listen. Okay, do I need to jump in yet? What is going on? And just pay attention to it. And I taught this in a 2-day social media management course of your responsibility is to listen to the news and go, do I need to dig deeper on this? And I think Snapchat definitely has evolved to that. But that's part of our responsibility in the world to be a good professional is keep an eye on it. So Elise, anything you want to add?
Yeah, well, I was excited to hear this episode and hear your interview, Greg, because Snapchat is like the one remaining social platform where I haven't really jumped in yet, which is my bad. I'm one of those, I guess I'm turning into like an old curmudgeon where I don't want to have to do the work of learning it. But, you talk, Martin, you bring up a good point about, is this like a Pokemon Go? I don't think so. I mean, when we look at the longevity, and I don't know if we have, I'm sure I haven't looked, but I don't know what the numbers are on how many new users it's gaining every day. But I don't think this is going away. So we can't ignore it. And so I actually put a task on my calendar to set up and start really using my Snapchat account after hearing the interview. So for those of you out there listening who are curmudgeons like me, I would advise you to listen with an open mind just to hear it, because if you don't, you can't ignore it. It's at the point where you can't ignore it. right? And your future buyers, even if your buyers today aren't using it, your future buyers are going to be using it. And so that's why we can't ignore it.
Excellent. So why don't we go ahead and get to the interview. Enjoy. Again, this is Carlos Gil, who is one of the top 50 influencers on Snapchat. Enjoy this interview. All right, everybody. Welcome to the Linking into Sales Social Selling Podcast. I am at the Internet Summit in Raleigh. It's 2016. About 2,200 people have descended upon Raleigh and to basically get their marketing nerd on. And they're hearing from great sessions. And I got one of them here who had a great session about using B2B, using Snapchat in B2B marketing. And that's Carlos Gil. And you've heard us kind of maybe mention him a little bit on some previous episodes. Carlos actually was, he worked for Winn-Dixie, ran the social media and marketing for them, then went to LinkedIn to replace Coca Sexton. Shortly after that, now he's with BMC Software as the head of social media marketing with them. And also is a big influencer, I think according to one of your slides, one of the top 50 influencers on Snapchat. And we've talked about Snapchat quite a bit because we think that it's a great way for you to engage one-on-one with your customers and prospects. And it's not just a sexting app, and we'll talk about that in a second. But Carlos, thank you very much for taking the time to come and talk to us.
It's great to be here on the podcast with you, Greg.
Excellent. So let's get right to it. Let's do it. Actually, before we get there, tell us a little bit more about your background and why did you get into social and why Snapchat?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. I've actually been on social media since about 1996 when it was called AOL. I'm a true digital native. I was 13 years old. My parents bought me a Dell computer for Christmas in 1996, and that was the moment that changed my life forever. When I saw that I could get connected to the internet, I could meet people. We talk about social selling now, we're just talking about this offline as it's this new thing, but realistically, man, I've been social selling when you really take into account building relationships, engaging with people. I've been doing that now for, 20 years. The way technology has evolved, I've evolved along with it. So from AOL, it was MySpace. And where I professionally got into social media was actually in 2008. I was working in the banking industry at the time, and I was laid off by AIG, which back then was one of the culprits behind the financial and economic collapse.
Thanks.
And this was November 2008. My wife was 8 months pregnant, November 5th, 2008, 8 months pregnant, and I'm out of a job. I was 25 at the time. I had nothing to fall back on. I did not go to college, and our economy was just tanking right before us. In fact, the month I lost my job, 500,000 Americans ended up losing their jobs as well. So needless to say, it was bad times. Well, the day I lost my job was the same day that I joined LinkedIn, ironically. I actually joined LinkedIn at the advice of my mom, who works in the real estate industry, and had been using LinkedIn for about a year or so before that. Again, social selling, using LinkedIn as a way to really grow and prospect her own business in real estate. So I joined LinkedIn and immediately started joining groups. I updated, I created a profile for the first time, and I really saw LinkedIn for two things. One, it was a way for me to really brand, or in this case, rebrand myself as a professional. Two, it was my gateway to connect with virtually anyone that was on this platform. And again, this is 2008, so LinkedIn was still very much at the ground level. So I really became inspired through my own job loss to help other people find jobs. And by joining different LinkedIn groups, by creating my own LinkedIn group, my company, Jobs Direct USA, was born. Now, again, to paint this picture for you, Greg, it's 2008. I'm a 25-year-old kid. The only money I had in my name was a very small severance plus a 401k account, which, again, in your early mid-20s, you really haven't saved up much at that point. Right. So it was dire times for me. I didn't have a large marketing budget to go out and grow my startup. And my startup, Jobs Direct USA, what it was essentially was a combination of an online job board and a job placement service. And right around the beginning of 2009, I heard about these events called pink slip parties that were occurring all over the country, New York, LA, and I was living in Jacksonville, Florida at the time. And I decided, it would be cool to do something like this in my own backyard, which a pink slip party was essentially a networking mixer in which you invite people who are unemployed and you invite recruiters to come network over drinks. And I hosted this first pink slip party in April of 2009, and I didn't know how to get the word out other than just use social media. So I saw social media back then the same way I see it today. It's a gateway. It's a way to connect and bridge your company with prospective buyers or people that might need your products and goods and services. So I went into all these different LinkedIn groups. I started going on Twitter. I started pitching to media. And next thing you know, I had media outlets showing up to my events. I had a few hundred people show up to the first Pink Slip party. And that for me was the pivotal moment in my life where I realized, okay, this could turn into something. And the first year I was in business, I've been very open about this throughout the years. The first year I was in business, I made no money, lost everything, went bankrupt, belly up, foreclosed, you name it.
Wow.
But I stayed along the path of, I had a mission. And that was, I really want to help get America back to work. And I became really good at using social media as a way to build awareness for my company, which every company today talks about using social media for brand awareness. I was doing this in 2008 and 2009, 2010 with basically a shoestring budget. And I did this all the way up until 2012 when I was recruited to go work for what became a client of mine, Winn-Dixie. They decided to hire me to be their first ever social media manager. And the rest is history. I'm currently writing my own history because it was interesting. The first 4 years I was in this game professionally. It was working for myself. The last almost 5 has been working for companies like Winn-Dixie and LinkedIn, and I'm at BMC now. And I've been able to see, not only through my own evolution, but working on both the B2B and B2C side, I've been able to see the parallels with how social media is used. And whether you're trying to sell to B2B or B2C, everyone's a buyer out there. And what I love about social media, whether it's Snapchat or Twitter or Facebook, is, again, I go back to what I said before, it's really the bridge between your company, products and services, and prospective buyers out there.
It's interesting. You and I have actually very similar beginnings to LinkedIn. I had transitioned down here from Northern Virginia, and someone at work there had actually told me, get on LinkedIn. You might connect with a few folks, as I knew nobody here. And then I submitted my request to create a group. It took a day for LinkedIn to approve. And I launched a local networking group here that eventually grew to about 17,000 members. It's called Linking the Triangle. And from there, my mission, because I had a job, was to help folks get connected through networking events. And I remember my first speed networking event that I put on, people paid $20 to go.
Yep.
And I had 75 people show up. And I'm like, ooh, there's opportunity here. And hence, we continue to move forward with social. And I had media show up as well. They recorded it. And it was very surreal.
It was interesting for the time. That was a point in time that I will never forget. Everyone always asks me, what are you most proud of accomplishing? And they think I'm always going to say something related to my corporate jobs. And I always tell them it's going out and building my own empire, even though it was not a multi-million-dollar business I exited, like most startups today in Silicon Valley. I'm really proud of the work that I was able to do, again, considering the point in time in our U.S. history and being able to leverage such a new medium, which was and is social media.
I think that it leveled the playing field for a lot of folks, that if they wanted to learn how to use it, social media was still kind of that new thing that people could get into. And what we were just talking before we started recording, that marketing took it and ran with it, but sales, do you think, we feel the sales kind of got left behind a little bit? And is that something similar?
Honestly, I feel like sales is a bad word.
Okay.
in the world of business, because when you think of sales, you immediately think of having to exchange dollars, and you think of someone approaching you. Or someone cold calling you, I should say. Sure. My approach has always been centered around relationship building.
Sure.
When you build relationships with no expectation of there being compensation or the end game being a transaction, you actually find that people are much more receptive and they open up to you. And let's face it, most people today are always looking out for themselves and for even others out in their network. So when you approach social media from the standpoint of, I just really want to find people to network with and engage, which I know most salespeople are out there with an objective and a mission because they have quotas to meet. But when you approach it from a different angle of, I want to meet cool people and I just want to I want to learn more about them, eventually the sale will come. Some of my best deals that I was able to close when I was running Jobs Direct USA didn't come in the first 3 to 6 months that I connected with these individuals. In some cases, it took over a year, 2 years.
Yeah. So that's it speaks to nurturing those relationships and continuing to take and build them out, whether it's using LinkedIn or Twitter, or in your case, Snapchat, which you're an influencer in, and you're using it every day to engage, kind of share things about your life and the things that you're working with. Like I know sometimes I'll check out some of the snaps you post about you and your son. And those are fun, just kind of watch that engagement, because looks like your son is an up and rising social influencer at least one day. So it looks like a great kid.
He's well on his way to being a Musical.ly influencer.
There we go. And by the way, for folks who haven't heard about Musical.ly, you want to have some fun with your kids or embarrass the heck out of them, definitely check it out and have some family fun with that. But it's kind of like that lip sync app.
Yeah.
Right? So I haven't checked it out with my kids, but I'm definitely going to. I asked my daughter, and she's like, "No, Dad." Yes, we are. So tell us a little bit about why Snapchat. I know that everyone who's kind of listening, like, one, not another social network. Two, I've heard so many bad things about it. You know, the bad press that Snapchat has gotten.
And let's just address the elephant in the room. Bad press is oftentimes you hear it's an app that's used for sexting, which is exchanging inappropriate photos amongst kids and college students. That's primarily the reputation almost, or the black eye that Snapchat got early on.
Yeah, that's I actually personally I steered away from it because of that, and because also I didn't want to end up with the app on my phone and my wife look at my phone and be like, "What are you doing?"
No, I ran into the same thing several years ago.
But I think that it's changed quite a bit because
absolutely
now, like a couple of days ago, they announced they're going to be launching that $20 billion IPO. So call your stock folks if you want to get in on something that's ground level and get in some more Silicon Valley tech IPO. But don't take professional stock advice from me because I own nothing. But now the reason why they have such a high valuation is because of the amount of engagement and the active users that they have inside of that. Typically, it's what we've seen as a measurement is.
So let's start to kind of pick apart some of the facts here. And the first is the demographics. Mm-hmm. So Snapchat reminds me of where Facebook was 10 years ago. And follow me here with this. 10 years ago, when you would sign up for Facebook, you would need to have a college email address. Mm-hmm. You or I, as guys our age today, would not be able to join Facebook back in the day.
Right, I couldn't.
So Facebook back then was a social network primarily used by college students and kids.
Right.
I remember when I was running Jobs Direct USA, and in 2009, I would do these workshops, and I would ask people to raise their hand, how many of you in the room are on Facebook? And almost no hands would go up. And people would often say Facebook is for kids. It's the same that I've heard from marketers up until this year saying I'll never be on Snapchat because Snapchat's for kids. It's literally adults saying the same exact thing. And it's those adults that as soon as they watch a Gary Vaynerchuk video, they drink the Kool-Aid, all of a sudden they're on Snapchat.
Yeah.
But what really matters here is a couple things. When you look at where people are paying attention on social media now, when you talk about Generation Z and Millennials specifically, they're not using Facebook as much as they used to. Why? And that's because they realize that, first of all, everything that you post on Facebook, it's traceable, it's going to be saved, it's indexed by Google. And I think you have a lot of kids that have wisened up and they've seen their older brother or sister, they've seen their parents get fired from jobs or kicked out of schools because of things that they've posted on Facebook. And they realize they value privacy, they don't want to have information or they don't want to have specific photos out on Facebook. And I totally get it. It's up to everyone to police their own social media. Yeah, totally get that. Try telling that to a 16-year-old kid that really doesn't care, that just wants to have a really cool app to text message his or her friends and send photos.
Right.
So one thing, I watch Gary very closely, Vaynerchuk, he always talks about the market. The market dictates everything. And it's totally true. Think of social media today almost like a stock market. Each one of these networks has a value, and that value is determined and dictated primarily based on the audience that's using it. So you have a social network like LinkedIn that's lost a lot of value because a lot of buyers at companies like me in my role feel, well, I have to be on LinkedIn, but at the same time, I'm always getting spammed in my inbox. I'm not going on LinkedIn anymore. I'm not going on groups. So the market's diminishing on LinkedIn because people legitimately are not networking on LinkedIn like they were back in the day when we were actively on it.
Sure.
You take a platform like Twitter, they're struggling to stay relevant. And you have millennials and Generation Z that are not joining Twitter. So Twitter's now capping off its growth. Mm-hmm. And what happens when a social network starts to cap off, it becomes the next MySpace.
Yeah.
It's not growing, it's not evolving, and what ultimately happens is it dies. Mm-hmm. Because you have the 16-year-old right now who's all about Snapchat and Instagram, but they could honestly care less about being on Twitter. Right. So if those people are not joining, well, guess what's going to happen? You and I are not going to carry the torch and keep Twitter afloat.
Right.
It's just impossible. And then the same thing happens with Facebook. Well, Facebook has been really smart because they've started getting the hardware space with virtual reality. Mm-hmm. So that's not a company that's going away anytime in the near future. They've been very methodical and intelligent. So it comes down to where are people investing their time. And again, going back to the stock market analogy, that's Snapchat. Mm-hmm. If you are a company that's trying to sell to a 13 to 34-year-old in the United States, you absolutely have to be on Snapchat today. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. As people in the professional community hear folks like myself and Gary speak at conferences, they hear podcasts like this, then they feel compelled to get on. Sure. And over time, that snowball effect starts to create the next Facebook, where the adults are on there. Guess what happens when the adults go on there?
They ruin everything.
The kids, they ruin everything, right? Then the kids look at Musically, they look at the next cool social network. So if you want to know what's going to happen 5 to 10 years from now, look at the last 5 to 10 years and see how everything has evolved. And everything's predicated at the end of the day, Greg, by the demographics on the channels.
Yeah, and before, to put this in another analogy as well, is that while this probably isn't the best one to mention on this podcast, but you look at like the adult entertainment industry, they're the ones who are driving everything to VHS or to DVD or to Blu-ray and so on and so forth. And I'm sure we'll see some VR stuff from them as well. I think there was stuff I didn't go to it, but the Consumer Electronics Show in CES in Vegas, I can't remember his name, with a guy from CNET who always does the Apple Byte and Googleicious show. Why can't I remember his name? But he got a demo of the VR experience in that. I'll put a link in the show notes if you want to check it out. It's a little weird, but I think that I think that where Facebook is going with VR is interesting. I'm not 100% sure where they're going, but I do think that like when you look at other tech, like what Microsoft is doing with HoloLens.
Yes,
I can see while it is very entertainment driven, but I can see a really great B2B application for it, for the sales rep that needs information immediately, or
information meetings.
Yeah, things like you're at a conference, for example, and you're walking around and it's got facial recognition, and something pops up and there's their latest Facebook status or the latest tweet or whatever it is, kind of pop up in a lens, so that way it kind of helps with building contextual conversations. How have you seen? How have you seen? You said don't say sales, but how have you seen salespeople actually using Snapchat for engagement?
So here's the thing: a lot of sales professionals out there are very quick to rush out and bash Snapchat. And I don't want to name drop, so I won't name drop them, but I'll tell you after the podcast. But you have folks in the social selling community, you have folks in the sales community that have been very vocal because they're all about measuring the ROI. And like, look, dude, I totally get it. Yeah. We're all in business for a reason. And if you're not measuring ROI, then you're just missing the whole point of why you should be in business. Right. But I look at Snapchat as a tool to get you in front of prospective buyers or people who influence buying decisions. No different than how you historically have used LinkedIn or Twitter to do that. Nothing's changed. It's just a different channel where you can cut to the front of the line quicker and get to prospective buyers in a much more almost efficient manner than having to just send them an in-mail and wait for them to respond to you. So the sales reps that I would consider good sales reps, ones that are trying to call on me, know if you want to get my attention, you have to go on Snapchat to do that. So they will add me on Snapchat, and they don't just hit me up on a direct message with a sales pitch. They sit back and they watch what I'm posting. Yeah. And then they will send me an email on my BMC email, and they'll say, hey, I was watching your snaps over the weekend. I love seeing what you and your family are doing. Like, I will instantly give you at least 15 to 30 minutes of my time. If you actually take the time to look at me as a human being, and again, I'm speaking to you as a buyer, as someone who manages a budget for a corporation. So I'm not just saying this as like pulling it out my butt. Right. If you really take the time to engage me, I'm going to give you my time. If you really take the time to pay attention, treat me like a person, I'm going to give you my time. When you send me otherwise a LinkedIn in-mail or an email, which you're also turning around sending to my boss and then my CMO, and all you do is just change the name, I'm not going to give you any of my time. Right. At that point, you can go on Snapchat all you want, and you've already lost me. So where I'm going with all this from a social selling standpoint or from a sales standpoint, what I've told all my buddies in the social selling community is do this. Go through your Rolodex or go through all the business cards that you get at conferences like the one that we're at, and use an app like CardScan where you can scan all these cards into the address book on your phone. And then go on to Snapchat, and Snapchat has a feature where you can click on Add Friends, Add from Address Book. What Snapchat's going to do is it's going to scan the address book on your cell phone, and it's going to identify who in your address book is on Snapchat. So if you have 100 business cards sitting around your office right now or in your briefcase, pull them out, scan them all. I guarantee you there's going to be people out of the 100 card deck that are on Snapchat. Maybe it could be 10. Mm-hmm. At that point, what you really want to do is you want to sit back and see what they're posting about. What are they like? Almost think of it like this. If you're courting me because you want to sell me something, Greg, you're going to take me out probably to a bar and we're going to have a beer or an IPA. And we're going to talk business that way.
Right.
That is what you should look at Snapchat as. It's where you really go get to know what people are outside the facade of social media and LinkedIn. Okay. Really get to know what people do and then just start a conversation. I can guarantee you this. Most salespeople, most of them will go to LinkedIn because they're trained to use Sales Navigator, and they will just use LinkedIn as a tool, and that's it, and they will stop at LinkedIn.
Yeah.
The good sales reps will go to LinkedIn, and then they'll say, oh, this person's on Twitter. Let me go engage them there. And then they'll stop there. The ones that are even better are going one step further, and they're going to Facebook. The best sales reps are the ones that are going to Snapchat because they're cutting through all the minutia, and they're skipping to the very front of the line.
Interesting. Looks like
that's growth hacking social selling on Snapchat.
And that's interesting. There's like one key point or at least there's a lot of things that kind of differentiate Snapchat from Facebook or from Instagram or anything like that. But the fact that the content stays within the network, it's kind of like that, dark social, where it doesn't get shared outside of it. And I think that's really interesting because you don't have all these tremendous, outside influences kind of like coming in and jumping in on your content, and it could be sending discussions off the rails or whatever. It is that better one-to-one thing, which for salespeople, it seems like that would be a preferred route because most of us are doing hand-to-hand combat in sales anyway. And sorry to use a war term there, but we do need to, and I agree, we do need to take and look at those relationships, look at what people are doing, listen before we actually start talking. I think that old saying, if you got 2 ears and one mouth, so listen twice as much as you talk.
Yeah, I did sales, like I said at the top of the show, for many years for my own company, and I've had a lot of folks in the social selling community, come at me because they say, well, you're a marketer, you're not a sales guy. Well, first of all, I think whether you're a marketer or a sales guy, you're always trying to push your product forward. So we're all really one and the same. We just have different roles within an organization, different goals associated with those roles. And I can tell you that if you are in sales or marketing, your primary objective is how do I get in front of prospective buyers? And and also, how do I get in front of buyers of competitors and get their attention? Whether it's sales or marketing. So if you have a medium where you can skip to the front of the line, which is much more intimate, much more personal, why wouldn't you use it? Yeah. That's what I say. Why are you using LinkedIn? I challenge anyone listening to this podcast, go to 10 buyers. Go to 10 people who are responsible for buying a product and manage a budget at their organization. Ask them, when was the last time they responded to an email? I would challenge you to do that.
Interesting.
I don't respond to them because most of them are very, very generic and they're impersonable. But if you hit me up on Snapchat, first of all, I don't even know what you do when you hit me up. You can literally just hit me up and say, hey, I'm a Miami Dolphins fan as well. Go Fins. And that could just lead into a conversation right there. Next thing you know, we're going back and forth. And it's like, I might be asking you, well, what do you do? Tell me about yourself. It's networking no different than any other social network. It's just been, there's kind of been like this stigma created about Snapchat that it's not as easy to measure and scale. And you have all the different buzzwords associated with it. And I just say, man, you got to get on there and just start using it. I know I get asked this question oftentimes, well, the audience I'm trying to sell to, and I bet you there's probably people listening to this right now, so I'll just answer this question. They often say the people that I am selling to are not on Snapchat, referring to they're trying to reach a senior decision maker at a company. Well, you have to analyze this. The person that you're trying to sell to, chances are, isn't using social media, period. They might have a presence on there, but they're not using it in their day to day, and the reason why is because they're at a C level, or very senior level, and they're busy people, and they just don't have time. So what happens when you reach out to these people anyways? They're sending you their direct reports. And why are they sending you to the direct reports? Because their direct reports are the ones that are going to use the technology that you're trying to sell. They might not necessarily manage a budget, but they are influential in the buying process. If you watch any LinkedIn social selling webinar, they always refer to that there's at least 5.5 people involved in the buying process today. So why circle the wagon with the most senior buyer? Why not go to the entry or mid-level influencer within an organization that you figure is probably someone in their 20s or 30s, and engage them on Snapchat. Yeah. Build a relationship with them. Let them be the conduit that sells upward throughout the organization for you.
Excellent point. And I know that we try not to pigeonhole ourselves into one or two social networks, and you can't just always use LinkedIn to get in. You could definitely learn a lot of information about somebody on LinkedIn if they've completed their profile and they're sharing and engaging content. Same thing with Twitter. You could learn a lot from there. But you do make a very, very good point about if you want to get that one-to-one, skip to the front of the line, get through the all the noise that's out there, goes directly to somebody. You can use that information you're still getting from those other social networks, and engage with them using Snapchat, especially if like you said, you a big football fan or anything like that, and just and that's obvious through looking at their profiles. I think that's extremely helpful, and something that I think we need to continually remind everyone, whether it's a marketer or a salesperson, is that there's a tremendous amount of data that's out there, and how we put the data together, and whatever social platform we decide to use, if we need to use one, to go talk to a prospect, develop a relationship, whatever the case may be, we can do that.
Right.
We can do that. So it's like, how do you then it becomes a discussion of how do you plan those sort of moves, and I think that's probably a discussion for a whole nother time. That's because that's kind of big, because actually let me ask you this: in a lot of sales organizations, they need to measure the output of their salespeople, right? How many leads do they get coming in? How many leads were qualified? How many phone calls did they make? And there's a lot of measurement that's going on in sales. How much of the data is actually used is sometimes questionable, but when a sales VP comes to a sales rep and says, or someone in marketing and says, what have you been doing all day? Well, I Snapchatted with this, and this, and they're like, well, show me.
But why put the emphasis? I'll throw it back, Craig. Why put the emphasis on the platform? Why not just say I engage X number of prospects?
Okay.
These are just tools at the end of the day.
I agree. I agree with you. But then you also have the case where, like, a lot of organizations that use Salesforce, and they're looking at the source of that content, or source of where that lead came in from. So if it's that way, they can do their attribution models and all that other fun stuff.
Of course.
So if somebody does, if they list LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and all of a sudden now Snapchat becomes one of those channels inside that drop down for Salesforce for that opportunity, then what sort of metric, or is there a metric that we should think about to help sales kind of show that it's successful, is a good platform for them to use?
Yeah, obviously there's activity that you can list, i.e. I spoke with X number of people through Snapchat. That's not going to necessarily, set any world records. It's not going to get people excited if you're only like working one or two prospects on there.
Right.
I think what you could do is you could create a custom tracking URL. I talked about this in my presentation here at Internet Summit. You heard me talk about it in the room, where you can create a bit.ly that you can code when you want to give your prospect more information about your company. Drop that link into bit.ly, and then drop the bit.ly link on Snapchat. That way, then you can measure that person actually took action and went to your website. And then ultimately, if you get them through the funnel and they apply for a trial or demo or download, then at least you have a tracking code that came specifically from Snapchat.
Yes, but let's put the caveat on that one.
Let's do it.
Don't put it on the first message, right?
No, it's like, here's the thing, man. Sales is like dating.
Yeah.
There's a courting process.
Yeah.
I'm going to be very transparent. If you want to sell me anything in my corporate role, we have to engage on a few times.
Yeah.
Like, we have to go out and break bread. We have to get to know each other. The reason why is because if I'm signing my name to a 6-figure or 7-figure contract, it's my rear and it's my career it's associated with it if something goes wrong.
Yeah.
And guess what? If something goes wrong, I'm not going to go to the account executive that I met once we onboarded. I'm going to go directly to you because you're the sales rep. That's why this is an extremely important relationship.
It is. So we're coming to the end of our recording here, but I know that you host a podcast, right?
Yes.
Is it still going?
So the podcast itself is not going. I have a series that I host in partnership with NASDAQ at the NASDAQ Entrepreneurial Center in San Francisco. It's called Real Talk with Carlos Gil. You can actually access it by going to my YouTube channel.
Okay.
If it's cool, I'll plug it here on the show.
Go right ahead.
So if you go to YouTube/Carlos Gil TV, you can go to my YouTube channel. We're about 8 episodes in. I'm getting ready to put that content eventually at some point onto iTunes, so it'll be available as a podcast. But for now, it's video.
Video.
Only.
Okay. Very good. Yeah, I've seen that kind of pop up a little bit, which is kind of cool. I do need to watch a few of them. Thank God you're only 8 episodes in. Otherwise, I'd be spending a lot of time trying to catch up. So, where else can we learn about you?
Yeah, go to my website, which is carlosgil.biz. It has links on there to all my social accounts. If you're on Snapchat, be sure to hit me up at @thecarlosgil.
Very good. Very good. Thank you very much for taking the time, and let's enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thanks for having me.
This is when Greg edits the video.
These people at City Club think I'm insane. I'm sitting here dancing, and
Especially to that,
And
you
you're
know.
doing webcam?
they can't hear it, which is even scarier.
Alexa,
Okay.
sing a song.
No, don't.
No, don't. Okay.
All right, so let's go and switch back.
Greg,
So I mean, so what do you guys think? What were some of your takeaways from it?
I got a lot of good takeaways. I mean, one of the things that actually kind of cracked me up was he said, okay, in 2012, he was hired as the first social media manager for Winn-Dixie. My takeaway is, what the heck, Winn-Dixie? You're a little bit late to the game. That actually that one little fact kind of shocked me. I think the biggest thing for me, and it goes back to something I said before the interview, is the fact that we can't ignore this. And, if you think about the way he talks about Facebook, right? At some point, it's probably going to go the way of MySpace. And I don't know about you guys, but I don't see any other platform coming up right now that would replace it or have greater market share over Snapchat, just based on engagement and how much people are using it right now. So it made me think, I'm working on a side business right now with a couple of people that's very heavily dependent on Facebook. And if we're going to be smart, we're going to have to figure out a different strategy to reach people that probably involves Snapchat. And so for those of us who listen to the interview and who may have a business that relies on Facebook, if we don't want to go the way of like a Blockbuster type of thing, we've got to go ahead and start engaging on Snapchat and getting a presence there, because that's where your buyers are going to be. Even if they're not there now, that's where they're going to be. So we have to be forward thinking, and we can't ignore it. What did you guys think? Martin, what did you think?
well, for me, first of all, I think I watched being involved with this since 2004. I've watched multiple things come on the viewpoint, like Pinterest coming on, and then Instagram coming on, and I just want to say I have compassion for all of you that resisted, but don't make up excuses because it's difficult to learn something new. That's the first thing, a reminder of, don't say you don't like it because you don't want to learn something new, right? But the biggest thing I noticed is that I liked he gave the strategy to start working through it, and it starts with social listening. And so he goes, first find the person and then start to listen and see what they're doing, see what's important. And what I say is look for an appropriate way to engage. And for people at my age, they have sometimes a harder time understanding how to first engage. So I'll tell people, imagine you were at a social and there's a group of people and you're coming up to see if you can engage. You're looking for an opening of how to engage, to give them a metaphor that often will transfer to the web. So that's one of the things I'd love to see a little deeper, is going in to explaining the points to engage with people and giving examples on it. But I just loved he gave some strategy to start. And I just want to say, just as in our social selling course, he starts with social listening. Just like you have 2 ears in sales and you listen first before you speak, same thing in this. You find your client, you start listening, and then you work into it. So that's one of my points on it. Greg?
Yeah, no, I think those are very good. One of the areas, one of the things we kind of talked about a little bit was the fact that that Snapchat is kind of like dark social, right? Because the stuff that happens inside of Snapchat doesn't leave Snapchat normally. Now, Carlos is a very advanced user, and he's actually, as we've connected on Facebook afterwards, he'll actually take and export some of his snaps as videos, his snap stories as videos, and then upload them directly to Facebook. and get further engagement going out there. Now, that's a social media influencer driving influence, right? Now, I'm not suggesting that salespeople start doing this, but just kind of keep in mind too that Snapchat is not a prospecting tool at all. It is a listening tool because you can take and listen to influencers and things like that, but and then also see what your prospects are sharing on Snapchat if they reciprocate the follow and all that stuff. But you use it to take and grow relationships and message somebody when something cool happens or when you need to get a quick point across within 7 seconds or whatever the video length is.
10.
Right? No, 10 seconds.
Yep.
Sorry. So when you, hey, you got one.
I knew it.
So use this. My suggestion is using this as that communication tool that helps you keep the relationship open, and which completes it helps complete the philosophy that we have about social selling being about opening and not closing.
Yeah. Yeah, I do have to ask one thing. I loved his term. What is it? Growth hacking? Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Or I forgot the definition of that, Greg. Do you remember? Someone want to share that with it?
Yeah. Well, growth hacking basically it's a marketing tactic in essence that you are constantly testing new things in order to grow your audience until you find the right thing that accelerates the growth. In software startups, this term kind of came out of Silicon Valley with all the startups that are coming out of there. And what growth hacking does is it helps drives that hockey stick growth that you see. And so it's a marketing tactic. And actually, Sean Ellis was the one who kind of coined the phrase for that. And you can actually check out his forum at growthhacking.com.
One thing off of yours is, you were the one that kind of brought up that it's a closed system. That's important. And I also think it's interesting how I'm at the age where I'm not excited to create content that disappears, but someone who's younger, that's an asset. So just noticing we have so many levels of age and culture and diversity in the sales force. Our responsibility is understanding their world, not mapping ours onto it. And so even though I don't want it to go away, if it's important for my clients, then I need to learn how to interact with it. You go to where the people are and then find out what brings them along your journey with them. So, Elise?
Yeah, well, and he brought up a good point that I think is he brought up a lot of potential objections that people would have to using it. And one was, well, the senior buyers aren't going to be on Snapchat. But the point he brought up, which I thought was really a good point, is well, think about who are the influencers within the company. And so if you think about your prospect and who might be advising them or who you would have to get through in order to get to your senior buyer, then if they're anywhere in their 20s or 30s, the likelihood is that they're probably using it. So it's thinking about that strategy of, well, the people the senior buyers are probably not going to be spending a lot of time on social media anyway. Right. So we've got to be strategic about our approach there. So I thought that was a good point.
Yeah, and actually that kind of speaks to what the Challenger Customer is all about, right? From the Corporate Executive Board, that book that came out not too long ago, earlier this year, I think it was, that basically, you have a number of different personas within the organization. Each of them has certain needs, and it doesn't mean you have to fit every single one of them, but there's going to be a mobilizer inside of each of those organizations, and that mobilizer could be somebody that is using Snapchat. So why not use Snapchat to help kind of mobilize them?
Yeah, based on the 5.5 people. And I actually think in a 360 photo, I saw one of the half people. They were cut off once. Oh, no, that's not.
They're within the stitch.
Right, yes. Within the stitch. But yeah, I think that's a good point. Another side point to me was good old card scan, using with the cards. That's an app where I've got card scan and I have it linked to Nimble, and remembering scan the card and let it go into my CRM. But he also said scan it, bring into your address book, and then see if they're on Snapchat. I thought that was a pretty good thing, but it reminded me, I was thinking of it mainly as the use to bring it into Nimble. And I went after I heard it on my phone and looked up, and there were a number of people in my address book on Snapchat I had not engaged with yet.
Well, and one other thing he brought up, and I'm wondering if you guys are still hearing this objection or not, but about people asking, well, you can't measure the ROI of Snapchat. Are you guys hearing people saying, I can't measure the ROI of social media in general, so I don't want to use it? I mean, I don't really hear that ever anymore.
Well, I think that it depends. If you're looking at it from an organic standpoint, maybe, but there's the paid aspect to Snapchat as well, which is using on-demand geofilters and things like that. So that you can take and definitely measure the ROI. But again, so this is what I'm going to mention is Gary Vaynerchuk a long time ago notoriously said, "What's the ROI of your mother?" Mm-hmm. Right. So if she didn't have you, then obviously there's no return on investment, from whatever action she was taking to try to create you. But if you, oh, come on, guys, you can laugh a little bit that way. But I think that, it's, you have to look at it. Can you put an attribution model specifically to Snapchat? It depends, right? Yeah. I think you have to look at the long play on it. You're building relationships. If you want to look at what is the return on a relationship? Well, sure. If you want to take and measure every single aspect of the relationship, go ahead, and see if you can track all that inside of Salesforce or in whatever measurement platform that you're using, and try and figure out exactly. Oh, well, if I engage with this person 16 times, then it's going to be turned to $1 million account. I don't know. I don't know if you should really look at it that way. Mm-hmm. I think you should look at it as you have human-to-human interaction, and eventually you're developing a relationship with somebody. You're going to strengthen that, and eventually they're going to have this degree of trust in you, and you're going to have a degree of trust in them, and that trust eventually leads to further sales and more business, and hopefully even business out beyond where you're working now or who you're selling for right now, right? So, it's really hard to say. Here's what I would say. If you're in marketing, sure, worry about the ROI. If you're in sales, have a relationship. That's what you're there for.
Well, the other thing I have to do with a salesperson with real sales, it tends to work on return on investment themselves personally. They're held accountable. So try it out, give it some time, usually 3 months for something new, and see if it gets you some results with it. So that's my answer on it. So I think we got it good. Greg, I want us to look for some resources for people getting started on Snapchat. But I think, are we willing to share our Snapchat ID and how they can find us?
Oh, sure. Actually, we'll put the link in the show notes for it.
Okay.
Or you can just search for us by name.
Yep. Martin Brossman.
Greg Heyer.
And?
Well, I have to make one first, but mine will be research.
Okay, got it.
Remember, old fart here.
Right.
Well, if you do before the episode's out, then I'm sure that if folks wanted to find you, they probably.
Yeah, I probably should do that.
And Greg, we talked about social listening. Is there any place they can get some training, or in some people's LinkedIn still looks kind of like a data sheet or resume? Is there any place they could get something with the holiday coming up to sharpen their saw for the new year?
Absolutely. You've heard it a number of times from us, and hopefully you haven't forgotten about it. Actually, I know majority of you have not forgotten about it. So come on out to socialselling.training. And don't forget, you can, until the end of 2016, we have our 2 courses out there that are absolutely free. Free.
Wow, that's like $100 of training or more.
Yeah, it could be more, right? We charge whatever we want for it, right? So so you can, we're not going to do that to you guys, trust me. But LinkedIn's profile development for social sellers and Twitter profile development for social sellers. Even though Carlos has a negative view of what's happening with Twitter, I still think you should still be using it, because there's a lot of engagement that's still happening out there. And it's still working for me. So, and then we have a couple other courses. We have one, which is that you can pay for, which is the social selling routine development. We definitely recommend that. It's been one of the requests we've gotten from a lot of folks, as well as we are now currently pre-selling our course on getting started with social selling, which will be out in January of 2017. So
let us know you heard of this show through the email. We might give you some more information. So send it to info@linkintosales.com. Just hint, nudge, nudge. Let us know.
Do you think they got that one?
I think so. At least they got that. Yeah.
Hint, nudge, nudge. Yeah.
They got that. Wink, wink. Got it. To be Monty Python. Well, Elise, I'll let you have a final word and we'll wrap it up.
No, my final word is just this was awesome. It was really helpful. It actually got me excited about using a new platform and engaging on it. So I like anything that gets me thinking differently, gets me thinking outside of the box, and this did it for me. So Greg, thank you for making sure you grabbed him and had the interview at the show. It was really good.
Very good. Well, I'm glad for it. I'm glad we got it. Thank you very much to Carlos Gil for taking the time to allow me to kind of pull him aside and find a quiet place in the Raleigh Convention Center to go ahead and do that interview. So it's fantastic. Anyways, thank you very much for listening to this episode of the Social Selling Podcast by Linking into Sales. Don't forget, you can follow us or don't forget to subscribe to us on iTunes, Google Play Music, Stitcher, TuneIn, or Player FM. Also, subscribe to us on YouTube, where you can also get the video and additional videos that we're definitely putting out there. Don't forget to go out to socialselling.training and take some of our free courses. And until next time,
this is Martin Rossman,
Greg Heyer,
and Elise Archer.
And you've been listening to the Social Selling Podcast by Linking to Sales. Have a great day.